So Tommy Fury defeats KSI by a decision, and he did so barely. He barely beat KSI. It was a super close fight, no matter how you score it or who you score it for. Many people out there think Tommy won the fight, but many people think it was a robbery and that KSI actually won the fight. Now, no matter who you score it for, it wasn't a robbery. Close fights are not robberies. To me, a robbery is when someone clearly won but didn't get the decision. That's not this fight. This fight was extremely close, and in real time, I did score it for Tommy. But in today's video, we're going to go through round by round and score each round individually and determine who really should have won this fight. Now, the judges' scorecards for this fight were all over the place, and I'd like to point out an error. This was a unanimous decision, not a majority decision. One of the judges just doesn't know how to do math. But all three judges gave the first round to KSI. Two of the judges gave the second round to Tommy, and one of the judges gave the second round to KSI. All three judges gave the third and fourth round to Tommy, whereas the fifth and sixth round were very split, with two of the judges giving the fifth round to Tommy and two of the judges giving the sixth round to Tommy. So as you can see, the scorecards are all over the place, but let's go through round by round and really see who should have won each of these rounds and thus won the fight. KSI sort of throws out his left hand and then steps in and really extends on a right hand to the body. This was a really good shot for KSI. KSI then steps away from the left hook and then slips the right hook, and they end up in the clinch. This was pretty good defense from KSI, better than a lot of what we've seen. He showed pretty good head movement here. KSI then steps in once again behind his left hand and then throws this massive right hand that lands to the ear of Tommy. This was a very good big shot. He then follows it up with a right hand to the body as Tommy moves away. Tommy then attempts to land a left hook as KSI moves into range, but because they were both moving into each other, it caused that left hook to land with Tommy's bicep. Tommy then finally lands his first clean punch of the fight, which is a nice left hook as KSI moves into range. He hit him very clean. This punch caused KSI to back up. Then as he's against the ropes, he throws this massive overhand right, which Tommy sees, picks up on the telegraph, and is able to avoid. Good defense here from Tommy. They then end up in the clinch where Tommy lands behind the head. KSI once again tries to explode in with a massive right hand behind the left, and it lands kind of behind the head of Tommy because he turns his head. It sort of grazes, but it's still a legal shot because Tommy turned into the punch. To end out the round, KSI slips a couple hooks from Tommy. They end up in the clinch, and then once again, Tommy lands a very blatant right hand to the back of the head, where the ref gives Tommy a pretty stern warning. But that concludes the first round. Now, who won this round? It is pretty clearly a 10-9 round for KSI. He landed the better shots, and besides that one left hook Tommy landed, Tommy really didn't land anything clean, and offensively KSI was controlling the pace and controlling the ring. Ring generalship is judged in boxing pretty heavily. Now, that's not necessarily who's on the front foot, it's the guy who's controlling the pace and controlling the action. You can control the fight off the back foot. For example, many of Floyd Mayweather's fights, he was off the back foot, but he was still in control of the fight. And then defensively it was pretty even, so that's not going to come into factor. So 10-9 KSI through 1. Now we're in the second round, and once again KSI does his favorite entry, which you'll pick up on that he did time and time again in this fight. It was pretty much his only entry to explode in from distance, and that's where he would throw out the left hand pretty sloppily, pretty lazily, just sort of gauging distance, and then explode forward with the right overhand. Tommy pulls back on this punch and throws a right hand to the body that appears to miss. If it did land, it didn't land with much power. And then as they both pivot, Tommy throws and lands this nice right hand. This was a very good right hand. Turned it over very well. Really put his hips into it. This might be the best punch that's landed throughout the entire fight so far. Tommy then enters into range with a slapping left hook. He didn't turn over the shot too well. He kind of just threw it out there and then throws this massive right hook, which appears to slightly graze KSI, doesn't land with much power, and then they end up in the clinch where Tommy once again lands to the back of the head. This one was really bad. This one was super blatant as KSI has his head down, and the ref takes a point away from Tommy. And a lot of people have questioned whether this point was deserving. I think so. This is like the 6th time Tommy's hit him behind the head. It was definitely not an accident, and he got a warning once for it and continued to do so. So I think the point taken was definitely justified. KSI then enters in again with the left hand and then the right hand over the top, and it definitely landed. Didn't have much effect on Tommy because his left hand was there, which decreased a ton of power. But then KSI throws and lands the best punch of the entire fight, where as Tommy tries to throw a left uppercut, he once again enters in with the left hand, steps into range, and then throws this massive right straight, which lands super clean and really hurt Tommy. I mean, this punch had Tommy holding on in the clinch for dear life as KSI is just winging right hands to the body, left hooks upstairs. This was the punch KSI was looking for, and credit to Tommy's chin being pretty good because not a lot of guys would be able to take that punch. KSI then again does his favorite entry where he steps in with the left hand and then wings an overhand as Tommy tries to throw an overhand left himself, and they end up in the clinch. And the reason they keep clinching and why they clinch throughout this entire fight is because both guys would move into each other. Neither guy wanted to back up in this fight. Tommy would throw his jab, KSI would throw his overhand, and they'd meet each other in the middle. Both of their punches would miss and they'd end up too close to each other, so they would clinch. Tommy would throw a jab and he'd step too far in. He'd overextend and overcrowd himself with his jab, which would, one, decrease the power of the jab, but also it wouldn't allow him to follow up with punches. He did this over and over again in the fight, and it's something he's done over and over throughout his career, and it's really something he's got to work on. And then finally, to finish out the round, KSI does the same entry that he's been doing throughout the entire fight, and he'll continue to do throughout the entire fight, where he throws out the left hand and then wings the right hand, and this appears to just barely graze Tommy. And that rounds out round number 2. Now, who won this round? It was a fairly close round. Tommy and KSI both landed very good punches on each other. Tommy landed that right hand, KSI also landed that overhand right, but in the end, KSI did land the better punches and the more powerful shots. He just overall outlanded Tommy, beat him in the clinch for sure, definitely outlanded him in the clinch. Tommy was definitely slightly better defensively and did control the ring, but it just isn't enough to make up for the fact that KSI outlanded Tommy, landed the more powerful punches, and just overall landed the most powerful punch, honestly, of the whole fight. So second round is a 10-9 for KSI. However, we do have that point deduction from Tommy, which makes this round a 10-8, which means that Tommy's going to have to win the next 4 rounds to win this fight. So let's get into the third round. Same entry KSI has been using throughout the entire fight. Tommy's able to slip the right hand, and then they end up in the clinch where Tommy once again lands to the back of the head. Tommy again overcrowds himself with his jab. If he didn't overcrowd and overextend on that jab every single time, it would leave room for him to throw that right hand. KSI then again, same entry, left hand, then grazes with the right hand. Tommy misses with the counter right hook, which has no power because of how square he is. And because of how they overcrowd themselves, they end up in the clinch where Tommy lands an okay right hand. Then off the break, while in southpaw, which is not his typical stance, Tommy lands a very good left hand. This is one of his best punches of the fight. Tommy then lands a very good jab. I think this is the first clean jab he's landed of the fight as KSI slips to the right. Whenever Tommy would throw a punch, KSI would always slip to his right, and that's something if KSI goes up against a better boxer or whoever he goes up against next, they need to identify that and make him pay for just being super predictable. He can't keep slipping just to the right side. He's got to move back or move to the left. He's got to mix it up. And then off this jab, again, Tommy overcrowds himself, which prevents him from being able to follow up. Tommy again lands to the back of the head, and then on that same entry, Tommy backsteps, KSI blocks the right hand with his left, then Tommy slips under the overhand. To end out the round, KSI appears to land to the body, then slips the counter right cross, backs away from the left hook, and then follows up with a right hand. This was very good defense from KSI. And that rounds out the third round. So in the end, who won this round? It was definitely a much better round from Tommy, where he landed the much better shots. Defensively was pretty close. You probably have to lean Tommy, and Tommy also did control the pace. So round 3, you got to go 10-9 for Tommy, which makes the fight 29-27 for KSI through 3 rounds. Opening up the 3rd round, Tommy lands a very good counter left hook, but he didn't turn over the punch, which really decreased the power. Tommy continuously throughout this entire fight could not turn over his punches, or just did not turn over his punches, and if he did and landed them on the knuckle instead of slapping with them, he would have really hurt KSI a couple more times. KSI steps in with a good jab, which we haven't seen much from him, and then inadvertently parries the left hand as Tommy tries to counter with a left hook, and then misses with a left hook behind the head. Tommy's accuracy with everything but his jab is just terrible. Tommy then misses with a right hand, good defense from KSI, same predictable entry from KSI as Tommy steps in with the jab, and they just keep overcrowding themselves. Tommy then lands a nice jab, one of the only jabs he landed in this fight, but once again overcrowds, allowing the right hand to miss as they clinch. Then off of the break, Tommy just misses with a right hand as KSI moves away. This was just an accuracy issue. It wasn't really defense. If Tommy was more accurate and was able to land that right hand, that would have done a ton of damage. KSI just misses on a right hand. Good defense from both guys. Tommy grazes with a right hook that bounced off of KSI's shoulder. And that's pretty much all that happened that round. It was a lot of clinching from both men. Mostly KSI. KSI was definitely clinching more than Tommy. I saw a lot of people saying that the ref should have stepped in and taken points from KSI for the excessive clinching. But the reason the ref couldn't do that is because it was both men. Both guys were clinching almost equally. And then in the clinch, KSI would also land behind the head. So it's kind of funny how KSI was constantly complaining about behind the head shots, but would also land behind the head. But that was a very close round. Probably the closest round of the fight. Defensively, both guys were pretty equal. Tommy slightly outlanded KSI and did land the slightly better punches. Tommy definitely controlled the pace, but overall it was a super close round, but you definitely have to go 10-9 Tommy here, which means that it is 38-37 for KSI through 4 rounds. Now going into the 5th round, KSI does the same entry, lands the right hand, and then lands a few nice punches in the clinch, and Tommy lands one nice punch as well. I think it was a left hook. Tommy then lands a good right hook, but KSI rolls with it, dipping to his right side, which again, every time Tommy throws his hands, left hook, right hand, jab, it doesn't matter. KSI is always dipping to his right side. But because he sort of rolled with the punch, that definitely decreased a lot of the power behind it. Both guys then slip each other's jab. KSI then enters in with the left hand, then the right hand. Tommy slips before the punch is even thrown, which does show some development in how Tommy was able to sort of pick up on the tells of KSI. KSI then misses with the right hand, and Tommy kind of grazes him with a counter left hook. Tommy then slips the right hand again off that entry, and they clinch. KSI then once again tries to explode into range behind the left hand. He misses with the right hand, and Tommy lands sort of behind the head, but it is a legal punch because KSI moved into it. Tommy then lands a left uppercut that didn't have a lot of power behind it because he didn't really put his hips into it, but it was still a good shot from Tommy. And then to end the round, Tommy steps in with a grazing jab as KSI misses an uppercut. KSI then appears to miss or just slightly graze Tommy with the right hand and then slips the right hook and the left hand. Good defense from KSI. So who won this round? It was another very close round. Tommy landed the slightly better punches. KSI was actually better defensively than Tommy this round, but Tommy did push the pace, so you have to go Tommy here. The right hook to open up the round, the jabs moving into range, and then his head movement to slip KSI's big shots. You have to lean Tommy 10-9, which means that we have this fight even 48-48 in the 5th round, meaning whoever wins this 6th and final round wins the fight. And then to open that 6th round, Tommy slightly lands a left hook and then overcrowds and misses with a right hand. KSI misses with a right hand, then Tommy just misses on a counter. Tommy's footwork is not very good. He gets square far too often because they overcrowd each other, and because of how square he gets, he loses power on his punches and loses mobility as well. Both guys exchange jabs. KSI lands a really good jab here, definitely more powerful than Tommy's. Grazes a right hand, then slips the counter right, dipping to the left again. Great sequence from KSI here. Tommy lands a nice, accurate, fast jab, but overcrowds. If KSI were to step back, like I said in my prediction video, then throw the right hand, he would have much more success. He actually only has success with that right hand when Tommy's moving away than when they move into each other. KSI lands a nice jab as Tommy slightly lands a slapping left hook. KSI showing a pretty good jab this round so far. KSI lands a very good right hand to the body and slips Tommy's right hand, dips his head to the left again. Same entry, KSI appears to land a pretty good right hand as Tommy tries to roll with it, and then once again lands a really nice right hand as Tommy tries to move away. What did I say before? That right hand is much more effective when Tommy's moving back than when they're moving into each other. Tommy grazes a few hooks. Some of them are behind the head, but they are legal because KSI moved into them. KSI then ducks below the left hand, and then same entry KSI's been using lands a very big looping right hand as Tommy lands a pretty good counter right hook of his own, but again, he didn't turn the punch over. If he turned the punch over, that would have landed much harder, but KSI definitely landed the better punch, put all of his hips behind it. Tommy then slips KSI's jab as KSI slips his left hook. And that is the end of the fight. That 6th round was fairly competitive. Both guys landed very good shots. But in the end, who won this 6th round and who should have won this fight? KSI definitely won this round. The defense was pretty equal, but he landed the much more powerful shots. And although Tommy did control the pace and seemed to beat him in the clinch, it doesn't make up for the difference in power between the shots they landed. So in the end, who should have won this fight? The answer is KSI should have won this fight 57-56. I had it 3 rounds to 3, but because of the point deduction, KSI should have won this fight. So did the judges get this right? In my opinion, they did not. Now, it was a super close fight, and I think you could score it for either guy. There were 3 rounds in there probably that were competitive. In the end, I think KSI should have won. And to be honest, he did win. Even though he might not have got the nod from the judges, he showed that he is a pretty skilled boxer, and I became a KSI believer from this fight. Now, was he very predictable? Yes. But against lower level competition that he'll face, a lot of them aren't going to be able to pick up on those tells. Tommy should have ran away with this. He has every single advantage. KSI's been boxing for like 5 years. Tommy's been boxing for 15. Tommy is bigger than KSI. Tommy has fought better competition than KSI. Yet KSI went out there and, in my opinion, beat Tommy and at the very least made it super close and competitive. But he didn't really seem to have a game plan out there. He went out there and tried to brawl with KSI. If you go back and watch my prediction video, I was very spot on with KSI's game plan, but I was not very spot on with Tommy's. In my opinion, Tommy should have gone out there and should have jabbed and moved away, but instead he stayed on the front foot and would overcrowd himself, which is why a lot of his punches, that right hand, that left hook, a lot of them missed because he would constantly overcrowd himself and get too close. And then his footwork in this fight was terrible. So what's next for both of these guys? I don't really care about a rematch between KSI and Tommy. This fight was not the best, not the most entertaining, a whole lot of clinching. As for KSI, I think it's time to do the Jake fight. You both lost to Tommy. It's the perfect time in your careers. It's very competitive, and we've been waiting for that fight for a long time. So I think it's time you finally put together the Jake Paul versus KSI fight. And then while we're here, because I'm not going to make a video on it, I'll quickly talk about Dillon versus Logan. I was super wrong with how I thought this fight would play out, to be honest. I was correct. Logan did win a decision, but Dillon looked terrible. He wouldn't let his hands go. He did land a few good punches on Logan. I think he landed 2 good right hands. And then, to be honest, I did expect him to try and pull guard or do something MMA in a boxing match to show off his skills or whatever, or just be funny, I don't know. And he tried to take Logan down, and he couldn't. And then he tried to put Logan in a guillotine, I think twice, and both times Logan defended it. So it was a pretty pathetic performance from Dillon. I did expect him to look a little better than he did, and I thought he would take it a little more seriously. Overall, it was kind of just an embarrassing performance from Dillon. Even the aspects of this fight that were in his own sport, the guillotines and the takedowns, he failed on all of them. But anyways, that is the end of this video. Enough boxing talk for a little while. Let's get back into MMA. We got a very good card coming up this weekend, and my predictions will be out hopefully Wednesday or Thursday. So subscribe for that. Comment anything you want down below. Like the video if you did enjoy. Follow my brand on Instagram. Follow myself on Twitter and Instagram. All links are on the description. And I will see you guys in the next video.
Stuck in a bad dream, Hollywood rich girl stuck in my backseat. And she wanna get at me, but the day's too short, can't let her distract me.